Sorry, peeps. Oh my God. That's really crappy. I'm sorry. You couldn't see me. So I went 4 minutes. We're gonna stick with that. Okay. We're gonna pretend that didn't happen and just, try to like see me in your imagination when you get through the first 4 minutes. Thank you for telling me. Let's see. You told me that like a while ago. So okay. So with this particular training, this is huge. This is a really important training. By the way, that's not your imagination. That's my 5-year-old behind me. So what inspired me to create this training was a parent reached out to me and she shared with me an experience that she had in the court system last week. And I'll just pull up my notes from what I got from that particular message. Okay. So basically this parent went to court and she was being aggressively, what's that word I'm looking for? Interrogated by the ex's attorney. And also in addition to so basically what happened was she was in court and the ex was being questioned by his attorney and he just started spewing a bunch of garbage about my client, and who hasn't been through that? Who hasn't had your ex sit there and just go on and share your life story, your childhood, all the issues you've had at work, your financial issues, your health issues, everything about you. They just start talking about you and you just have to sit there and take it. So a lot of parents have dealt with that. And so in addition to the ex sitting there and just bashing her for forever, the ex's current partner did the same, like the new wife did the same. And then the old neighbor did the same. So this mom had 3 different people on the witness stand, just saying bad things about her for an entire day. Doesn't that feel great, right? That doesn't hurt your self-esteem and shatter your soul, does it? Right. So that's what happened. And so now the mom goes back to court in a couple of days where it's her turn to be questioned. What's that word? It's not interrogated. Is it questioned? What's that word in court when they put you on the stand and they examined? Yeah. She's going to be examined on Thursday. So it's going to be her turn to speak. So she's sharing with me. She's like, I was being bashed for the way I do my hair. I make herbs. That's her job. She's an herbalist. So she was making herbs. She was bashed for that because, if you're into science and you take like I take plantain, oh my God, plantain leaves and I grind them up and make a paste and put it on my skin. So stuff like that. If you use Mother Nature as your pharmaceutical, toolbox, then you're just a bad person. So every parent who's into natural stuff has dealt with that. They think you're like a witch and you're into sorcery. So she's being bashed for her lifestyle. I know a lot of parents that are like, for me, like being vegan, that was like a bad thing. It means I don't eat meat, so I must be psychotic. And so basically what parents go through is that they get trashed for their lifestyle, their beliefs, their opinions, their philosophies, their motivations, their feelings. When I wrote my appellate brief, when I appealed my case to the appellate court, I had to say in my appeal as one of my main issues that I basically was deprived the right to parent my son because of my thoughts, beliefs, motivations, philosophies, ideas, and basically being who I am. So that's usually what people are that's usually what people are being attacked for in family court. So this went on for like 8 hours. So the parent reached out to me and she's like, oh my God, being treated really badly, blah, blah, blah. And I don't, what do I do? That kind of thing. And so I said, okay, great. So during this process, did your attorney cut in and say, let's have a fitness hearing? Hey, they're accusing the mom of being unfit. Let's have a fitness hearing. Let's go for it. Let's go ahead and prove this mom unfit. Let's go through the process where someone needs to prove this parent unfit. Did your attorney ask for that? And the parent said, no, of course not. The attorney's never asked for this. And so anytime someone's sitting on the stand and just going on and saying bad things about you, your attorney could cut in and say, I want a fitness hearing. Because clearly it looks from what these witnesses are saying about me, my hairstyle, I wanted to live in a bus at one time, that kind of thing. That's what this parent said. So that's another thing. Like if you had an old interest, like an old desire, like 5 years ago, if you were in college and you got drunk and you said, oh, I want to live on the moon, that's going to be brought up in court. Like, oh, did you want to live on the moon at one time? Is that a fit place to raise your child? So past philosophies, past desires, beliefs, opinions. So parents will throw that into the hearing because, they're trying to make you look bad. That's the whole point. And so you can say, look, if clearly with all of these things that are being said, it looks as though the other side wants to prove me unfit, I would like to give that person the opportunity to do that in a proper hearing. I want a proper due process fitness hearing so that that parent can bring forth the proper amount of evidence to prove me an unfit parent. And so, so you can do that. Now, this is not legal advice. You guys always have to research your rights, research your laws, consult with an attorney. Do what you got to do before you take my advice, but just consider that that's something you could do. And that's certainly something I would do. And I have done this. And I've had clients that have done this. And what I have seen every single time, this has never failed. The judge will be forced to stipulate, not legal advice. This is just what I've seen. This is what I would do. I would always recommend this, but talk to your attorney. I have seen the judge stipulate on the record, this parent is a fit parent. We're not questioning the fitness of this parent. That's what the judge has said every single time. And I've looked at a lot of cases. This is what has been said. And then it forces the opposing party, which is your ex, to stipulate, meaning agree, that you're a fit parent, because nobody wants to stop the proceedings and then figure out how to create a new hearing for your fitness. That's just a lot of extra work. It's going to be a lot of extra due process, and it's going to be a more tight procedure. It's going to be a more scrutinized procedure, because proving a parent unfit requires like specific steps. Whereas in family court, it's just a Jerry Springer show, and there's really no standards. There's no guidelines. There's no rules. There's no criteria. It's just two parents trashing each other. And then after 3 days, the judge just picks a winner and a loser. So that's the basics of family court. Whereas a fitness hearing, the standards that have to be met are the same standards that the state has to meet if the state wants to like put your kids into state custody or foster care or something like that, or come in and order certain medical treatments. So if you're going to be proven unfit by the state has to come up with a lot of criteria. And so if you ask for that same amount of criteria, I've never seen this not happen. So I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I've just always seen this happen every single time with my clients, with myself, even with my husband's case. Every time the parent says, I want a fitness hearing, this other side's trying to prove me unfit. Almost like, I can't imagine the judge being like, yeah, let's do the fitness hearing. That sounds like a great idea. Because these judges, they don't want to do that shit. Because that's called work. And they don't like to work. They like to sit on their freaking, all right, I'm going to be nice. My daughter's here. They don't want to work. So they don't want to have to take those steps because it's work. And so if you could get the judge to stipulate that you're a fit parent, then all those questions go out the window, and you could stop that line of questioning, right? Yes, someone says they always agree you're fit. Yes, they do. The judge says, oh, well, I don't think you're an unfit parent. We're just looking out for the best interest of your child. And you could say, great, but you stipulated that I'm a fit parent, which means that they can't deprive you of your rights. But here's the thing, guys. Like a muscle, right? I'm doing HIIT workouts now, and I'm like, if I don't do my HIIT workouts for a while and I go back into it, I'm like, whoa, I can't freaking hold a plank. Like, I can't do a 45-second plank. I can only do a 20-second plank. If you don't use the muscles, they almost don't matter, right? If you're not flexing that muscle, if you're not using that muscle that God gave you, like our forefathers fought really hard for these rights. If we're not using these rights, they don't matter. They're literally atrophying on the curb outside of the courthouse. So the thing is, parents always think like, well, I have rights, I'm going to be fine. This is what they tell me. They're like, Monica, I have rights, it's fine. Your rights only matter if you use them. Unfortunately, the responsibility for us to use our rights falls on us. It's not automatic, okay? It should be, but it's not. The rights are not automatic. Walking into family court is signing a blank check to the state to do whatever the hell they want, unless you tell them the parameters that you're going to accept. Okay. So you can say stuff like, it's okay that you want to make a best interest of the child determination as long as you protect my constitutional rights. And so in this particular case with the parent getting, beat up on by the other side, she is trying to insert the Constitution. But I believe her attorney is not putting those arguments in. Let me just make sure that I am reading this correctly. Let's see here. I could tell I'm getting old because whenever I read something close up, I squint. That's what old people did when I was young. So, okay. When I brought up constitutional rights, they seem to be overlooked. So I think it's going to be on me to have to remember what to say when I go. So a parent should lead with their constitutional rights. The constitutional rights should be like the main course, and all the other bullshit. Whoops, I already swore in front of my daughter. I'm sorry, Sadie. The other stuff are side dishes. You know, the mom being late to drop off. Baby, you can't talk, remember?
But Mommy, there's no blankets, so I can sleep.
All right, go downstairs, honey. Go downstairs and do it. So the Constitution should be the main course, 14th Amendment, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, okay? So it's like your gravy, your turkey, and your smashed up potatoes, right? And like all the other stuff is just like your cranberry sauce and your peas and stuff, okay? I don't know, whatever you meat eaters eat on Thanksgiving. So and so if you're not bringing in the Constitution on day one, or better yet, in your pretrial motions, like you want to lead with the Constitution, and all the other stuff, like who was late to pick up. Even, you know, and the mom who wrote to me said, I tried to point out inconsistencies with his parenting. Let me see if I can remember correctly. She said something like, I had a whole bunch of parental inconsistencies regarding things and she wouldn't use them. Okay. So if your ex is inconsistent, that's kind of a side dish. That's not really as important. Like your ex being inconsistent, you know, not really a big deal. You know, I mean, in my opinion, I think leading with the Constitution and making sure that the state knows that they can't diminish your rights without proper due process, like AKA a fitness hearing, is the way to go. And so you have to get in alignment with an attorney that will fight that way. Now, I'm not saying this is what you have to do. I'm not an attorney. I have to keep saying that over and over again. I'm so sorry. It's just that I haven't seen the other method work. I have not seen that work. We have a tremendous crisis in the family courts. We have a multi-generational crisis. You know, I'm 41. I'm sure most of you guys watching are like between, 40 and 60. You guys grew up with kids in your classroom. Little Scotty in geography class saw his dad every other weekend. Your boyfriend in high school or your girlfriend in high school saw her dad every other weekend. Or, it's like we grew up in this epidemic of fatherlessness in the 80s and in the 90s. And now we're seeing it like it's just crazy. Now the mothers are losing their kids left and right. And we all know that the mothers are treated just as badly as the fathers were. And so it's getting worse because family court has become, people have learned how to monetize their love for their children better than they used to be able to. It used to be like the dad just gets every other weekend, pays a ton of child support, not as much corruption and nastiness. Now it's like experts, GALs, parenting coordinators. The system is creating new jobs, and making up job descriptions and making up an emergency and making up crises so that it could justify bringing in new people to whatever, to make money off of you. So monetizing, parents' love for their children, cashing in on that is an epidemic and it's a crisis. So going with like, well, let me just point out that my ex is kind of inconsistent. And then the ex sits there for a full day and talks about you doing herbs and like wanting to live in a school bus and having certain philosophies. That's not real law. There's nothing there with any teeth. So what I would do again is learn your constitutional rights and tell your attorney to apply them, because learning about them, a lot of parents will learn their constitutional rights. And I was guilty of this too. Okay. I get it. It's so much easier to sit there with your cozy blanket and your cup of hot chocolate and read about your constitutional rights. It's so cozy and it feels really good to learn that. It feels really empowering and it feels really like safe and you feel like validated when you learn your constitutional rights. But getting to court and dealing with haters and dream stealers and bullies it's hard, because then that's what blocks parents from actually applying the Constitution. So I know that that's a big step and that's really difficult. Oh, you got a blanket? Good. Okay. I don't even want to see what my other office room looks like. She probably tore it up. So another thing this parent pointed out, because I said, did your attorney object on the record? And she said, no, she didn't. And I said, I'm concerned that your attorney isn't making objections to the fitness stuff because that's what the judge will capitalize on. I want to talk about this in my live stream. Sadie, you're supposed to be quiet, remember? And so she said, my attorney's really mad. She was really emotional about what happened, so, and that's nice. It's nice to have an attorney that's mad and emotional and on your side. It's nice to have that empathy from your attorney, but that's not why we pay them. We don't pay them to be mad and on our side. We pay them to put our rights into the record so that we don't lose our kids. And so I said, being mad and emotional is great because it's really nice to have that empathy, but it doesn't do a single thing for your case from a legal standpoint. It's, and so that's the thing, like having an empathetic attorney that's supporting you emotionally is great. But if they're not putting anything into the record, if they're not fighting for your constitutional rights on the record, it's not good. So someone just made a brilliant comment. The hearing is not about the best interest of the child, but who decides is the best interest of the child. Yes, I love that. That's a really beautiful, oh God, yeah, Mars. I like to talk about Mars. So you've been following me quite a while because I've been talking about the Mars thing for a while. I always say judges can decide that your kids should live on Mars. And if that's their best interest, then you're stuck with that. Okay, so it's really hard to be treated that way in the courtroom, but the system allows it. And so again, at the end of the day, if you just say, I want that fitness hearing, then it nullifies everybody's testimony. It certainly nullifies what your neighbor is saying. Your old neighbor was testifying. So if your old neighbor is testifying about what a bad parent you are, why didn't that neighbor call CPS? I think I said this a couple weeks ago. Why isn't your neighbor calling the police to press charges? Why isn't your former spouse's current wife, if she's going to sit there and talk trash on you in the court, why didn't they call CPS on you? Why didn't they call the police on you? Why didn't they say, hey, police, hey, Popo, my former wife wanted to live in a bus at one time. And that's really scary to me. It's really dangerous to my child. Can you please go and arrest her for child abuse? Seriously, because I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is ridiculous, right? It's completely ridiculous. What, sweetheart?
I want to sit on your lap. Okay,
you want to sit on my lap? Okay, you gonna be nice and quiet so I could talk? Okay, good. Okay, don't make funny faces, okay? Because I don't want to distract everybody. Okay. So if you have your former partner sitting on the stand for 8 hours talking trash about you, you can just say, why didn't you call the police when this happened? Why are you waiting till now to complain about it? Like, why are you now in court telling the judge what a bad mommy I am? Why didn't you press charges against me when you first found out about this? So if you don't like my hairstyle, if you think that's bad, call the police and say, my former partner has a really bad hairstyle. I think that's bad for my child to be around. Go press charges against her. This is the kind of stuff that we need to start doing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's how ridiculous this is. Because it doesn't say anywhere in any child abuse statutes that having a weird hairstyle is grounds to lose your child. And I'll be honest with you, if you have dreadlocks and this is being held against you, I would just say that it's a religious belief thing, and then they can't touch that. They can't touch that because that's a religious discrimination. Okay. So I hope that clarifies. If you have follow-up questions, do send me a private message or just ask a question in the comments here. Sadie, can I have you sit here?
No.
Why don't you sit here? Okay. All right. But I have to hold my books. Okay. I got to hold my books. Can you want to go downstairs and color?
No.
All right. So we're going to do something super exciting tonight. We're going to do an exercise, hands-on exercise. For this exercise, I want you to have a journal. I tell all of my students to work with a journal, use a journal when they're working with me. For this exercise, I want you to have a journal and repeat this exercise. I'm going to kind of rush a little bit. I'm going to talk a little fast, but do watch, pause, write, and then watch a little bit more, pause it and write. Okay. So I want you to take up 3 pages in your journal with this exercise. Okay. So with this exercise, and this directly ties into what this topic is, dealing with haters, bullies, and dream stealers. All right. Because no matter where you're at, you could be in the very beginning. Please don't do that. You can't do that, honey. Okay.
I want to sit on this.
Okay. That's fine. I give in more when I'm live and people are watching me. So no matter where you're at in your journey, you're going to have people in your orbit that are going to be trying to steal your dreams and try to make you feel bad, try to make you question yourself, why am I doing this? What's the point of this, right? How many of you have been through that, where you're I really like Monica's stuff, I feel good when I listen to her podcast, but but then like when I try to talk about it with someone else, they think I'm crazy. I have people that have like watched my master classes and they're like, I want to take your course, and then they'll call up their mother or their cousin Carol or coworker Cassandra, and they'll tell them about it. They'll be like, hey, there's a girl that talks about like how to heal yourself in the court system, how to empower yourself, and how to get through the court system and be an activist. If you're explaining it like that and they know that you've been through hell, they'll typically say, go get an attorney, go get an attorney instead. Why would you, do this when you could just get an attorney? So is hiring attorneys, all right, can you please stop? Okay. Is hiring attorneys and buying your way out of problems helping? Is that working? I have looked at 50 years worth of data and I have found that doesn't work. So it's good to have mentorship in addition to your legal strategy, okay? Because getting a good mentor, whether it's me or like Ron and Sherry Palmer or just any other coach, okay, it doesn't have to be someone who specializes in this area, although I do recommend that you work with someone who understands the corruption because it's really hard to do it otherwise. And I'm speaking from experience. I do have a therapist and she just doesn't quite understand, Please stop pushing that. You're making a lot of noise. So, okay. So it's going to look like a bunch of high schoolers partied in my office from the way she's moving things around. So, and so for me, even though I've healed from my family court trauma, so like you might be like, oh, Monica has no problem. She's, that's not true because I've moved on to the next level, which is like activism, building a business, building a legacy, writing books, podcasts. So when you enter that new territory, you're going to get hit with new challenges. So if any of you are thinking about doing activist work, and I know a lot of you want to do this because my podcasts and my YouTube videos about this topic has the most views. So when I see that, like, a bunch of 75 people will listen to a specific podcast, I'm like, wow, people in one day, I'm like, that means that they care about this issue, so that's just kind of how I gauge it. And I have found that anything related to activism and legacy building is highly sought out. What, sweetheart?
Are you done? Can you call with me?
Yes, after I'm done, sweetheart. So no matter where you're at, you can be like a world-class speaker talking about these issues and you're still going to be hit with dream stealers, haters, and bullies, no matter where you're at. So for me, if I run a Facebook ad, I always have to make sure, you have to be quiet, baby. Remember you said you're going to be quiet? Okay. So no matter where you're at, you're going to be hit with bullies. And so in my case, like if I run an ad, I'm going to get hit with bullying from the bar industry. I'll get attacked by parents for charging money to do this kind of work. So I do charge $1,000 for my course if you get the premium level. And so parents have told me, said, you should be doing this for free. And so, I always say, well, would you want someone walking into your place of employment and saying you should be working for free? If you work at a grocery store and someone says you should really be doing this for free, you wouldn't work for free. So, and so what I say is I say stuff like, well, I don't owe anyone a free service just because you were traumatized and victimized. And I get it. I understand the trauma. I understand what you've been through. I've been there too. Geez, I was freaking suicidal when my son was taken. I was broke. I was 25 grand in the hole with credit cards. I couldn't, oh my gosh, it was beyond crazy. And I get it. I know what that bottomless pit feels like. And I know what it feels like to actually hit rock bottom in that bottomless pit. And so, but that doesn't mean that I owe anyone a free service because of that. And so, we don't get mad at grocery stores for charging for food. We don't get mad at, people who build houses for charging for their housing that they build. And so, most people can't work for free unless they're independently wealthy. So, those are the kind of things I say, but those are the kind of things that I deal with. And of course, the bar industry says that I'm ruining kids' lives, by doing this. And so those are my challenges, where your challenges will be elsewhere. Your challenges will be with other people, And so we all go through these cyclical journeys, and and this whole thing is about overcoming your journey where you're at and overcoming your challenges. So a guy named Joseph Campbell created something called the hero's journey. I don't know if he created it, but he talks quite a bit about it, which is tremendous. And so the premise of the hero's journey is that, hang on one second, sweetheart. Sorry. The premise of the hero's journey is that walking the path to self-discovery is the best thing that we can do when we're in this chronic state of trauma and difficulty, like government abuse. So again, walking the path to self-discovery while you're being hit with all this horrible stuff that most people aren't dealing with is the best thing that we can do. And then healing these inner battles within yourself is one thing that you can do and that you do have control over. So that's what I teach parents. Like, you can't control if some guardian ad litem is doing this thing or some parenting coordinator is lying about you to the judge. And you can't really control what these flying monkeys are doing, but you can control the inner battles that you have within yourself as you're dealing with this. You do have control over that. And you can discover yourself. You can discover your calling. And I always believe this. Sometimes it takes a sudden impact of trauma and injustice to unlock your gifts. Okay. So for me, I was like the most average person on the planet before my son was taken. Like, you would not have remembered me if you met me at a party, like I would have been like, hi, I'm Monica. And like I did not express myself. I went along with the crowd. I was very vanilla with my opinions. I was a people pleaser, and there's nothing more boring and unattractive than a people pleaser. Okay. Mark my words. And I was just a mediocre, go with the flow, status quo kind of person. That was how I learned how to get through my traumatic childhood. And I never let go of those patterns well into my 30s. And so when my son was taken, I unlocked my gifts when he was taken. I learned that I have Sadie, stop. I learned all about my intuition and all these things, my self-expression, all that came out after my son was taken. Okay. So this whole thing with like the hero's journey, this spans across different cultures, different eras, different religions. And you also see it in movies like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Matrix. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 12 steps of the hero's journey in this live stream, which is going to be so awesome and so cool. So I want you to journal, get your journal out. And every time I tell you one of the steps, write it down. And if you're watching the replay, you'll be able to pause it and reflect on what I'm saying and then unpause it and keep watching. So it's going to be an exercise. It's going to be interactive. So I want you to pay close attention. This is really cool. And this applies to all of you. And if you're feeling really stuck and like, oh God, I feel trapped. I hate my case. I wish I never had children with this person. I'm broke. I'm losing, I have an autoimmune disease. I'm scared. Like, whatever you're dealing with, you are perfectly fit to do this exercise. Like, this exercise is for you. Okay. So this is like super insightful, and this will help you unlock yourself from those bad patterns of thinking. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the hero's journey. And like I said, it can be an inner voyage where the whole hero's journey is just like something within yourself, like a battle within yourself. It doesn't mean you have to have actual issues with other people. If you've been isolated for a year because of COVID and you've only talked to 5 people in the past 12 months, you can still go through the entire hero's journey. Okay. So it could be an inner battle, or it could be an actual challenge, like an external challenge that you're dealing with other people, or it could be a combination of both. Okay. So again, this will fit you perfectly if you're dealing with anything, if you feel stuck. All right. So we're going to talk about the very first step of the hero's journey. And again, the person who created all these steps is Joseph Campbell. So if you want to Google him, you could learn more. So the first step is the ordinary world. Okay. And this is you as the lesser version of yourself, the status quo version, the go with the flow version, the compliant, complacent, yes man, yes woman, the people pleaser, and just do what you're told. That's the ordinary world. And most people are stuck in the ordinary world. People who have lots and lots of talents and gifts will not express those because they're stuck in this step, and not just people in the family court, but just people in general. If they're working in a cubicle job, they're 30 grand in consumer debt, they're 30 pounds overweight, and they're just, going with fast food, Netflix, and a mediocre marriage. And then they're waking up and doing all over again. And they're just on this like hamster wheel, and they're not exploring anything outside of that. So that's the first step, which is the ordinary world. If you want to do it in the context of family court, that would just be like, my attorney told me to say this, so I'm just going to say this. My attorney told me to do this, so I'm going to do that. My attorney told me just to accept every other weekend, so I'm going to do that. It's just going with the flow, not making any noise, not taking up any space. Okay. And I believe we've all started off there. I know I did. I just went with the flow for 5 years. I was in the ordinary world for 5 years. So from 2010 to 2015, that was me. And so wherever you're at, it's normal. Okay. Step number two is the call to adventure. And this is the time where you start to wake up a little bit and you start to see that you start to learn about all of this, like the family court system, like, oh, this seems corrupt. This doesn't seem right. There has to be more than just going with the flow. It doesn't fit, and this is also like, if you're not in the family court, this is when you start to think like, do I really want this cubicle job all the time? Or, all my life? Do I really want to just work until I'm 70 and retire and just stay here in the same town, that kind of thing? And so that would be step 2, which is the call to adventure. It's when you start to think about things outside of what you're doing. And so at this point, you can choose to explore more and go further with that, or you can choose to go just back to step 1. And again, 90 to 95% of people play around in steps 1 and 2. Okay. And also in the step number 2, the call to adventure step, that's when you also confront your fears a little bit. Like, oh, I can do a little bit more with my case. I can start maybe using my rights. Maybe you've heard 1 or 2 of my podcast episodes and there's some discomfort there. The very first time you hear my podcast episode, it can feel really uncomfortable. It can be like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing any of that. That girl's, maybe that works for her, but that is not my thing. Like a lot of people, there is resistance the first time you watch my video or listen to my podcast, because it's not vanilla. It's not go with the flow. It's kind of punchy, and that could be really intimidating to some people, and it could be confrontational. And so that's step number 2. So step number 3 is the refusal of the call. So that's kind of like what I said, where you look at step 2 and you're like, oh, I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to go back to this cozy little ordinary world. So the step 3 is the refusal of the call. And that's when you're in your unwillingness to change. That's when you're like, first step is the ordinary world. The second step is the call to adventure. And the third step is being like, oh, nope, not my thing. Okay. And most people do that. Like most people don't just jump into this like new thing. It's a process. Like it takes forever. It took me like a full, I want to say it took me probably 18 months to get through step number 3, where you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to even look at that. And also with step number 3, in my business, because it's not just family court. The hero's journey applies everywhere. It could apply to a weight loss journey. Okay. I went on a 15-month weight loss journey where it took me 15 months to lose 40 pounds. And I went through this whole thing with my weight loss journey. And so with my business, with this step caused me to close my business for 6 months. The first half of 2019, I did not have a business because I faced a giant, I was confronted with something major. And I talk about that in a lot of my master classes, if you've ever seen them. So we're not going to get into that, but I did close my business for 6 months, and then I progressed into the hero's journey after that. That's why I'm here right now. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. So step number 4, I like this step a lot. And this is usually where people are when they first contact me. It's meeting with the mentor. Okay. So in your family court journey, that could either be like the first time you contacted me, or it could be the first time you started researching like Martin Luther King. Not that I'm Martin Luther King, because I know that I can't compare to him. It could be that you read Ron and Sherry's book. Maybe you visited Ron and Sherry Palmer's website and looked at some of their materials. So it's mentorship. It's when you actually meet someone, or not necessarily meet someone, because it could be like a figure like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Rosa Parks, Alice Paul. It could be an activist, someone that you really admire. Maybe you read their biography. So that could be a form of mentorship too. But it's the step 4 is when you connect with somebody and it really profoundly changes your views on all of this stuff. Okay. So for me, with my weight loss journey, I would say Corinne Crabtree was probably my mentor, even though I never met her. She was someone who lost 100 pounds. And I was like, well, if she could lose 100 pounds, I could lose 40, so she was my step number 4. So With step 4, you know, in the movies, like with Lord of the Rings and stuff, it was Gandalf, right? I don't know. I never watched Lord of the Rings, but there was a mentor there. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi was the mentor in Star Wars. Like, don't yell at me. I don't know my superhero fantasy movie trivia. There was Morpheus in the Matrix, right? So that's where things really start profoundly changing, where you're like, okay, there's more to this than what I'm doing. And so number 5, step 5 of the hero's journey is crossing the first threshold. Now, this is when you go from the known world to the unknown world. And this is scary AF, right? This is when you're just terrified, and this is like the equivalent of like jumping off the plane with a parachute. It's just so scary. You're just plunging into this unknown. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I've been there many times. The first time I did public speaking, oh my God, I almost left out the back door. The first time I spoke in front of 200 people, I almost literally left the building out the back door. I was willing to have them be like, what happened to Monica? Then publicly speak, you know, and I publicly spoke anyway. I hated myself for it. I couldn't even watch the recording afterwards. And, but I did it, you know, so that's like that's like when you just go from the unknown into the known, the known into the unknown. And also it's also the point of no return, because nobody does something like public speaking and then goes back to their old self. Nobody does skydiving and then goes back to their old self. Nobody runs a marathon and then goes back to their old self. So when you accomplish something major, you don't go back to your old self, at least psychologically. Like you're not going to completely 100% go back to your own self, because as I always say, transformation is a one-way valve. You don't really untransform once you transform. Okay. Now you can have relapses and stuff. We talk about that later on in the hero's journey. But it's a transformation. Okay. It's like the red pill from the Matrix. So step number 6, and you guys could all relate to step 6. This is when you face tests, enemies, and even some allies. You know, you start to kind of build an army, you start to get some support, you know, but you will be tested. So if, for example, in the family court, you could get a sanction for using your constitutional rights. You can lose your case, right? You could cite your rights, and then the judge says your rights don't apply. So that's a test. Okay. So a lot of times the judge will say your rights don't apply. There is no constitutional rights. And you go home and you start to question all this. Like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I even thinking about this? You know, you start to question yourself. Like, this wasn't a good idea. I shouldn't even be going into this. And also you will get enemies. You'll get people that don't like you. Why? It's crazy. Like, the more important you are, the more lives you change, the more you try to do better for the world, you just get more people that don't like you. And so one of the interesting things about me, I want to say from like first grade until I was maybe like 39, I was so afraid of people not liking me that I literally changed who I was to make sure I had no enemies. I didn't want any enemies. I was the person that when I was working, if I found out that someone who worked in a different department who I saw in passing once a year, if I found out that person didn't like me, that took me out for a week. I would literally start scanning the classifieds to look for a new job because I could not handle not being liked. And I would obsess over it. I'd be like asking other people, like, have you ever heard Alexis say anything about me? Oh, what does she say about me? I wonder why she would say that about me. Does she even know me? Like, that was the kind of person I was that led me to drop out of high school. Okay. In college, like, I would like change classes if I thought someone in the class didn't like me, because being liked was the most important thing in the whole planet for like most of my life. Right. And so now I just don't care. So, you know, if I cared about being liked, I wouldn't be doing this, because I have more people that don't like me now than I ever have in my entire life before today. So, and guess what? I'm super happy and I love my life. So it actually was a sham. It was just like a hoax of a protective barrier. Like, what the hell was I protecting myself from? But so that's a test, you know? So when I started to like build my podcast and build my YouTube channel and like do these live streams, I had to just be okay with not being liked. Okay. I've had people in this group. I had to kick people out of this group for being mean to me. And so that's a test. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of tests. And also, like, if you have a lot of issues with like doubting yourself and people say, well, the Constitution doesn't apply, or if you say that, you're going to get in trouble. If you tell your attorney to act to defend you in that manner, the attorney's going to fire you. If you try to get rid of the guardian ad litem, then it's going to look bad for you. If you file this motion, it's not going to look good for you. So those are all tests because you're trying to be powerful. You're trying to exude your power. And you have people, naysayers and dream stealers, telling you not to do that and just be vanilla and just, stay in your little box. And that's a test. So if you could get through that, then you could progress into the hero's journey. A lot of parents get stuck on this. I was stuck on this with my business. I was stuck on this step for probably like 2 years, maybe 3 years, like too long, way too long. And so when you're trying to be liked and you're being very vanilla, you're not changing lives. You're not really doing anything for anyone. You're just an extra body taking up space, And so there's a lot of inner conflict that happens in this step. And also another test, if you're an athlete, it could be equivalent to like breaking your leg, Have you ever seen the movie Rudy? Doesn't Rudy go through a lot of issues with like his grade point average and his injuries and his size? Like he's really small. So there's like, you could have these issues in other dimensions, like if you're an athlete, get injured. If you are trying to write a book, you hit a writer's block or you lose some chapters of your book, or trials and tribulations, basically. All right. So that is step 6. So we're going to move on to step 7. So step 7 is the approach to the innermost cave. Now, with all this, pause it and journal and try to say, well, where, how does this step apply to me? Am I at this step right now? And you might be in like step 10 in one area of your life, like weight loss or healing from, an illness, or saving money for a house, or, looking for a new job, building a new relationship. So like you can be at different levels of the hero's journey in different aspects of your life. And then in other areas like the family court, you could be on step 2. So that's just the way it goes. So for me, like I'm on step 10 for some areas and like step 1 for another area. That's just life, So again, step number 7 is the approach to the innermost cave. And this is when you're hitting a major, major, major battle, like, fighting the dragon in the cave to look for the treasure, that kind of thing. If you have a phobia of something like I do, I only tell people I'm super close to, but I have a really major phobia that actually impacts my life. And if you know me personally, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But for me, the phobia, facing this thing that I'm afraid of would be like step 7, like a really scary moment where you have to face your fears and confront your fears. And it's not fun. It doesn't feel good, but there's a ton of growth here. So in family court, it could be the first time you interrupt a judge. That's really scary to interrupt a judge. But if the judge is interrupting you and you can't get your words out, you might have to interrupt that judge. You might have to say, no, Your Honor, that's incorrect. You might have to say something like that. It could also mean having a marshal standing right next to you. That's really, really scary. So think of like really scary things that could possibly happen in court, possibly even like your child hanging up on you and not wanting to see you, or losing a lot of money, getting hit with attorney's fees. So it's kind of like hitting bottom. And so that's, and then like, what do I do about that? Do I go to the appellate court? Like that really bad rock bottom challenge in your case, that could be equivalent to approaching your innermost cave. So step number 8 is the ordeal. So it's an extension of step 7. So the ordeal would be the first time you start filling out papers to appeal your case, the first time you sit down to write your appellate brief, when you sit down to write out that lawsuit. It's really easy to be like, I'm going to file a lawsuit. A lot of parents say that. I think that's great, by the way. Okay, file lawsuits, of course. But it's harder to actually go to the federal court or go to the big courts, get the paperwork, find out what the fee is, finding out that it's like $500 to file a lawsuit, and then all the research you have to do. That's really scary. It can feel very suffocating. And so the ordeal is just more into that deep abyss of despair. And, do I keep going further? Do I get out of here? Do I, just that whole like inner conflict what do I do here? It's really getting into like the absolute worst possible thing that you could deal with your case. It could be even like your child having a therapist and your child tells the therapist they don't want to see you anymore. So it's really like your ultimate worst fear, the worst possible thing that can happen. And it could be a financial hit. It could be have your child turn against you. It could be the state taking your property. It could be a lot of things. So, and also in this particular case, you're also at this place where you say, if I stop now, I could still save myself. So with this whole appeal thing, you could just not file the appeal. You could just be like, no, I'm not doing that. So it's just a lot of conflict, a lot of turmoil, a lot of discomfort, but there's a lot of growth here. You're just not aware of it at the time. All right. So, and it also could involve losing your appeal and then wondering if you should go even further. Do I go to the Supreme Court? Do I go to the United States Supreme Court? Do I go public? Do I call a reporter and get my story out? So it's just a lot of big decisions and very tumultuous. Okay. So step number 9, and this could take a while. It could take a year in between these steps. This could easily be a 12-year journey for you. Transformation is never quick and easy. Okay. So step number 9 is the reward. Okay. So you've been through all these things, you decided to keep going. And so you're eventually going to get rewarded. Okay. Your reward could be you get your child back. You put all this hard work in, you do all your things right, and you finally get your child back, or your child willfully comes back to you. You're minding your own business and you get that random phone call from your child and they want to come see you, or they want to live with you. Your reward could be healing your inner turmoil, healing the trauma. It could be building a podcast, building a nonprofit, doing something tangible with your issues in the court system, being a thought leader in the system, being a speaker. Just your reward is that you get to help others. You get to create this a healing template for other people to follow. Okay, you get to be one of the people that actually makes it instead of people still stuck in steps 1, 2, and 3. So you could be a mentor for other people who are going through this and need that mentorship. So I would say that I'm in step 9 in this. I'm probably more in step 10, but it took me a long time. I'm 11 years in. So it's, if you keep going forward, if you keep moving forward and you just push through and push through and push through and get the hell out of steps 1, 2, and 3, you're eventually going to reach the end of this journey. Okay. So step number 10 is called the road back. And that's when you go back to the ordinary world and but you're different now. You're not going with, the old habits and the old thinking that you had in the very beginning. So you come back to the old world with a new way of being. So I guess that would be like something like what I do. And a lot of parents want to do this kind of work. A lot of parents want to be mentors for other parents. They want to write a book. They want to blog. They want to have a podcast. They want to have a nonprofit. They want to run for office. So that's what I mean by like the road back is like taking all the things that you learned and applying it to your community. Okay. So this is interesting. There's you can hit a new phase of falling backwards in your journey, like a relapse. You can relapse. So for example, me, if like there was a couple of times where my ex texted me and I immediately got triggered and I started acting like the way I used to act, where I would fight with him and stuff like that, instead of applying like my new wisdom and not doing that, like I wasn't practicing what I preach. So I fell back into my old ways, and we all do this. Sometimes we leave a romantic relationship and we go to therapy and we learn how to not have those communication patterns and those behavior patterns. And then we get into a new relationship and we find that we're acting the same way that we did that ruined our first relationship. Okay. So that's like a, part of the road back. You can relapse. You can fall back. If you're an alcoholic and you went to like rehab, you could relapse and fall back. And so I know with my weight loss journey, there's been like a handful of times where I fell back into my old patterns and I had to go, oh my God, wait a minute. I lost 40 pounds. I worked my ass off to do this. And I don't want to fall back into that old way. And you're very hypersensitive to retreating back to the way you used to be. And so part of this transformation is catching yourself before you really, really fall back. Because again, transformation is a one-way valve. So even if you relapse and you fall back, to your old habits, you can pull yourself back out. Okay. So it's really important to know that it's okay to relapse and mess up, but you can pull yourself out of that. So step number 11 is called resurrection. And this is when you really get your new insights, like big time, because you've been through all the trials and tribulations, you've been through the traumas, you've been through the battles and the decisions and stuff. You may have relapsed, okay? You may have fallen back into your old ways, and then you have the wisdom to pull yourself out. And then with these new insights, you're even more transformed. And so it's called, there's like this is kind of like death of the ego. You stop caring what people think of you. Like all the issues that you had, all your old ways, those don't apply anymore because the ego dies off. You no longer care what people think of you. You no longer do things because other people are watching. There's I'm going through like money therapy right now because I think that money is a big part of our lives. And if we could heal our bodies, we should heal our relationship with money as well. So I'm going through like financial therapy right now. And one of the exercises they have you do, I'm doing Dave Ramsey's program, by the way. It's freaking amazing. Oh my God. It's so incredible. I'm doing Financial Peace University with him because I did lose everything in my custody fight, and I'm still repairing from that. And one of the exercises they say is, would you still buy that thing if you didn't announce it on Facebook? You know, and I don't really have that problem. I'm not really much of a spender, but some people are. Some people will buy something and they'll put it on and then they'll put pictures of themselves on Facebook. So if you don't put yourself on social media with that new toy or that new shirt you got or like the new hairstyle, will you still get it? You know, and there's nothing wrong with putting your stuff on social media, but if you have a spending problem, would you still buy that thing if no one knew about it? If you're the only person to ever know about it, you know? And a lot of times people won't do it. They won't get their hair cut. They won't dye their hair if they can't show it on social media. And so I found that such an interesting exercise because I was like, wow, that's just crazy. And even me, like sometimes with like my food, like I'll make like a cute salad and I'll take a picture of it and put it on Facebook. And so it's almost like, would I still make my salad look that way? Would I still dress it up as the way I do if I wasn't going to share it on social media? And usually no, like I'm not going to dress up a salad on purpose just for me. Like if I don't slice the red peppers in that direction, like I don't really care. So, and I found that I do that, and it's just really funny. So those are like energies of the ego when we do stuff like that. And we're all human, we all do it, but it's just interesting how when your ego dies off, and I think you should all look into this. I mean, there's so many like mentors out there that talk about like killing off the ego, and it's just like phenomenal. It's such amazing stuff, but that's really like a step, like when your ego starts to die off, it's usually when you're in step 11, which is the resurrection. Yes, you have a ton of wisdom there, you know, and then step number 12, which is the final step, is returning with the elixir. And that's when you start healing others, you start helping the community, and you just become like this completely transformed thought leader. And like you're the hero. You know, you're just like, you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, you are that person. You become that person. I'm not there yet. I am not at step 12. It's going to be a while. But I know that once I get to step 12, I'll probably stay there for a while. And then I'll probably give away my whole business to someone else who wants to take over. Because I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want someone else to take over and do this. So, you know, my end date for this kind of work is 16 years away. So I want to do this for another 16 years. There's a reason for all that. We won't get into it. So yeah, so it's a cycle. So you can, and then when you get to a new level, you can find yourself right back to the beginning, but on a new chapter. Do you guys remember Legend of Zelda when you were a kid? Did you play that game? So after you rescue the princess Zelda, you get to play the whole game all over again. Do you remember that? And I think like you have like better armor. It might not be the Legend of Zelda. I might be thinking of Metroid. So there's a lot of video games in the 80s when we grew up where when you beat the game, you get to do the game all over again, but you have better armor. Your enemies are a little harder. I think Super Mario Brothers did that too. So it's really cool. And so I like to think about a lot of things in my life, like video games, because I'm a gamer at heart. So yeah, that was a really heavy training, and I hope that you got something out of it, because I certainly did. And I love that I always do these in under an hour. It's always like 58 minutes when I'm done. So I'm so glad you all came on. And if you have questions about this, or if you just think I'm freaking crazy for doing this, you could say that too. But I really liked it. So yeah, excellent. Let's see what we have for questions. We don't have a lot of questions tonight because I went on a little later. But if you want to share anything about this, do so in the comments or just send me a private message. Let's see here. So someone says, just ask them on the stand if you're a fit parent. So I don't know if you're allowed to address the court in that manner. I think there's been times where someone tried to ask the judge a question and the judge said no, or like, you can't ask me questions. I think that's a funny idea, though. I mean, it can't hurt. What's the judge going to do? Freaking punish you? Ask them on the stand if you're a fit parent. So I think if you're on the witness stand, you can't ask questions. What you could do is you could file a motion. Motion to adjudicate. I would say motion to show cause and maybe like have the other side prove that you're not a fit parent. But I also really like the idea of just suggesting that you have a fitness hearing. That's just my opinion, not legal advice. So someone else said, I'm going to be catching the replay on this tomorrow. Thank you. Yeah, someone said the podcast is free. Yeah, I have so much free stuff. So if anyone's watching and you don't like that I charge for my services, I do have a free podcast. I have a free YouTube channel. This group is free, the Best Interest of the Parent Facebook group. My book is free, and I have a free workshop, the Emotional Freedom Workshop. So there's quite a bit that you could learn from still. And let's see what else. All right. Sorry for not being visible for the first few minutes, but I'm so glad that we got to meet up, and I will meet with you all next week. Okay. Thank you for coming on. Have a good night.